All right. This is Ask USAR. I'm Ben Dantowitz with Rohel
I,
Senapati, two of the board members working on USAR Roundnet, and we just want to bring you guys as much info as we can. Where to start, Rohel? You wanna go into the mailbox first, and then we can go on
yeah,
tangents?
let's go
Okay.
ahead and do that.
First question we got in the Ask USAR inbox is, what do you think needs to change in order for the sport to become more of a globally recognized sport and for more money to be put into it? Could it be something with the game itself? Products? Lot of questions in there.
Yeah. I'd say I'm just gonna ramble and then I'll find the true answer. First things first. Right now it's important to acknowledge that Roundnet is really, really young. And we don't have a lot of institutional investing that other sports do, simply because of the nature of our products. People who play Roundnet buy balls and they buy sets and then they buy various other things, but it's a hard market to enter. Let's take pickleball, for example. Hundreds of companies selling paddles, balls, a bunch of other equipment, there are even shoes. So that type of money is dependent on the game itself. Moving on, I think bringing institutional investors into the game of Roundnet is going to take some time, specifically a notably long time, and I doubt that companies like Spikeball haven't already tried to do this. Of course, USAR plays a crucial part in that, but I don't think that it's it's something that is doable in the next year or two. It's 10, 20 years down the line, slow, continued organic growth that is going to make sure that the sport is sustainable into the future. So that's probably my generic answer that to the first part of that question. In terms of rule changes, I know there are a lot of things that are being experimented on and done. I think the big thing here is that people don't watch sports because the rules are cool. People watch sports because there is a storyline. They're invested from a young age or at any age, and that's what causes people to watch sports. And so, maybe a rule change changes the storyline of Roundnet. I don't think that will happen, but I trust the IRF, I trust the USAR Rules Committee to implement changes that will advance the sport. I know we all want to see more rallies. Rallies are cool, but we can't take away from other aspects of the sport or take one step forward and two steps back with any rule change.
I just want to add, I feel like a lot of people see pickleball, and if you're not familiar with it, like I'm not really active in it, it feels like it came out of nowhere. I was watching a interview with the now former president of USA Pickleball, who said when he first started working on the organization in the early 2000s, they already had thousands of members that were not just members of the organization, but also like pickleball ambassadors. So they were going out and doing the things the way people maybe build Roundnet clubs, but they weren't doing it in the tens or dozens. They were doing it in the thousands of going out and advocating for growing the sport. So I think it's weird because there's like the big institutional side of things, but as you mentioned, it's like we're so early and so young and small as a sport in Roundnet that really focusing on how everybody can play a role in the grassroots level of just building their local community and not necessarily just growing their competitive side, but getting the sport and advocating for it outside of the Roundnet bubble for parks and recreation or for local schools and introducing it to people that otherwise don't know about it. That's kind of why other sports have picked up so much in the recent years. And yeah, like you mentioned, there's lots of other changes that might come with the sport. We can talk about a couple other questions that came in, but yeah, I think the challenge is like we have really big ambitions to like move towards the Olympics, and for USA Roundnet, part of that is getting on a trajectory that gets us into the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee, so that we're following the Olympic model in the U.S. But it's definitely not an overnight thing, and we live in a world that is very fast-paced. So much as we'd want to go really quickly, we have to kind of set the pace appropriately and also the expectations.
Yep. I think we basically echoed the same answer there. The sport will grow. Through USAR, we are seeing organic growth year over year, but we'd all love to see it grow faster. Just need more people involved on the local scene. And the more we get there, the more likely it is that we get institutional sponsors.
Definitely. I know we had one really specific question around rules and rule changes. Not that I think like we
Yeah.
know the exact answer, but I
It was
wanted to toss it out.
specifically, is there going to be a rule change in the near future, or will a mammoth or revolve or bigger ball be the future of the sport? Um, long story short, I don't know. Um,
Me neither.
yeah.
But I would love to try them.
Yeah,
I
and
think
we are trying them.
so. So one challenge, yeah, one challenge, right, is like because the sport's so small and young and early, it's important to try things, but we just all have limited capacity. So if you're listening and you're someone who just wants to play and compete in the current state of the sport, it's a lot to say you're going to then take an hour or two to go try out a new thing and be both like a competitor in the sport and also like an experimenter or like, a trailblazer trying out new equipment. So, we kind of have to ask not only like governing bodies if we want to make these changes, but for like the IRF, for example, they're working on trying to figure out how to set the right boundaries and guidelines for what equipment changes should and shouldn't happen in the future. And I think that's been a very slow going process because it's a really hard thing to do without a lot of information from the community, from people experimenting on what directions, what guardrails should be in place around equipment or what guardrails should be in place around rules. So on that front, like it's a bit of an I don't know, but also it's going to take a little bit more, I think, interaction between everybody in the community and like NGBs or like the IRF.
Yeah. Speaking of that interaction, June 29th, Nationals in Raleigh, Sunday, if you stay, it's going to be an experimental tournament with some modified rules. So, if you want to push the sport forward, we'd love for you to come out to that and give feedback on that Sunday tournament.
Yeah, we're still toying with what equipment we might be able to get our hands on, and or like maybe some rule changes that are easier to do without changing the equipment up. So TBD there. I know I'm planning to be in attendance, so I hopefully will be able to play in that. That should be a fun time. I feel like Roundnet variants are always really fun. Just trying to figure it out.
The other two questions we have are a little bit on rule changes, or not on rule changes, about our player rankings. So we're gonna have the head of player rankings come in a couple of minutes. But between now and then, just kind of talking about where the sport is at, and the various things that USAR is needing to do to grow the sport. Would love to talk about that for a little bit. So fully transparent, these are the numbers that we've publicly released. 2023, we had about 2,500 USAR members. And for comparison, pickleball or tennis are in the hundreds of thousands there. And so the sport is still small, even though it seems way bigger than you think it is. So that's the first thing. But we are growing year over year. 2022, first year USAR track members, we had 1,800. 2023, 2,500. 2024, at least in the first few quarters, we are growing, albeit a little bit slower. So that's important to know. Secondly, USAR is working on a lot of various initiatives to push both the growth of the all areas of the sport forward, as well as the growth of the highest level of the sport forward. And so, if there's anything you think that USAR can do better, we are always looking for volunteers. We are always looking for more people to join and give back. And we're an open book. So we will do our best to, if you have an idea, facilitate that idea. That's how I joined USAR. I was really fed up that there was no public data available with the growth of Roundnet. Joined USAR, worked on that project, and now we have a little bit better purview on the data that is available in the sport. So if you were in the same bubble
be
as
the
I was,
change you want to
thanks
see in
once
the
again.
world. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely echo that. I feel like a lot of times, I think it's cool that you've got like someone who's a little newer and you have a fresher perspective on what you want out of USAR. And for myself, I've been wanting to do so many things and I'm usually constrained by capacity. But yeah, a lot of the times people come and say, hey, what if you guys did this? And I usually say, yep, let me know if you know anyone who wants to work on it or if you want to work on it. So not only are we like very receptive to ideas, but we are also like very welcoming to bring in new people. I think one example of that has been trying to improve and build better ways to track rankings and player data over time. And usually that is meant when we put out updates and we're telling people we're experimenting with things. Communities questions are really helpful and engaging. And then usually what happens is people say, hey, actually, I'm a data scientist. I want to come help work on this. And obviously, rankings data are one important part of growing the sport and tracking its growth. But there's a lot of other things that are not necessarily as technical. And, we need people working on all sorts of things. And like you mentioned, trying to be the change you want to see. I just want to give kudos on this in case people don't know in other forums that Rohil edited and condensed like 50 plus some odd games from the US National Series on our YouTube channel because he was like, what if we did this? I said, well, it would take a lot of time. And he was like, I'm going to do it anyway. And I was like, wow, you're kind of nuts. But yeah, he just kind of did it. And yeah, having even just one or two more people to do, it doesn't need to be all the work. It needs to just be, maybe it's a little bit of work. And that's really what has been really helpful for growing not only the sport, but specifically USAR Roundnet as, a not-for-profit member-driven organization over the last couple of years has been a couple people here and there chipping in an hour, 2 hours a month and getting things done. So yeah, there's always more to do. And unfortunately, we're like we mentioned, there's not like institutional funding where we can just hire full-time staff to get it done. So it's a little grindy.
It is. Although we are working on better ways to make sure that
I think that's also been helpful having your fresh perspective of how can we do things better versus I know for my part, I generally am just slogging through most of the things and just trying to get things done instead of asking how do we do it better. But yeah, a lot of really capable people that you guys probably don't know about that are working on things behind the scenes. And I know among other small projects, Rojo has been trying to figure out how to make sure we recognize everybody that's working on that stuff. So yeah, lots of things that are happening to support you all that maybe aren't the flashiest, but move the needle one step at a time. The same way everything you guys do as players and community members is really helpful. Was there more you wanted to touch on around like what is USAR Roundnet's role in the sport? I know. I guess everyone probably can give a different perspective on it. I think like functionally, like we're a member of the IRF, and so growing the sport globally, it's about having more national governing bodies because there's some impact on if you want to become an Olympic sport, you need to have all of these national governing bodies. Running national championships is one of the particular requirements, among other things, and being members of the International Federation to demonstrate to the International Olympic Committee that we can be a sport in the Olympics and have that viability. But maybe more like on the personal side of things instead of like the functional side. What are some things that you have in mind around USAR Roundnet and its role?
Yeah. I think there are three things that USAR does and can do a little better. The first thing is right now we are pretty hands-on in the way we try to grow and sanction various events in the United States. So year over year, we're increasing the amount of events we sanction, and continuing to do that allows us to track all the players in the United States a little bit better. And so, highly encourage a bunch of local tournament directors to sanction as many events as possible. We're trying to reduce the amount of burden associated with that, but I think that's one thing that is crucial in ensuring that the sport grows, and it's crucial in the work that I tried to do and go out and secure sponsors for various things and bring money into the sport. The second thing that USAR can do and is working on to kind of grow the sport is connecting all the various communities that exist, or connecting the funnel of the beach player to the grass player to the actually go out to a competitive pickup, to tournaments, to travel to tournaments nationally. That funnel is something that USAR can and is working on through various projects. Like I know most people are familiar with like the regional pickups tab in Discord. That should probably be a website somewhere, and USAR is working on that right now. And then there are various things that we're working on from a marketing perspective to bring players into the sport. Whether it be mail outs in 2025 for tournament series, or figuring out a better way to add value to players already in the USAR ecosystem, whether that be through more content or through a way to guides to grow your local community, all various things that USAR would love to work on and or is currently working on. But biggest call to action is we need more resources. And so that's where hopefully the people that listen just try to chip in wherever they can.
And I think that the two big resources being, like, as I say, like time and money. So it's like, yes, money being more members at the grassroots level. More members means we can fund more work, but also time being a really important one. So one volunteer who can pitch in an hour here and there, even if it's just an hour or two a month to help work on these projects, is probably just as, if not even more valuable in regards to helping build out these activities, these services to help the sport, compound on itself. I think like something that's maybe always forgotten, so it doesn't hurt to mention extra times, is like Rohil and I on like the board of directors here are unpaid. We're all fully volunteer, and so we're doing this kind of, when we stepped up to work on the board in service of the sport and the community. So all of the money that comes in for membership goes into all of the things you do and maybe don't always see firsthand to support Roundnet. So yeah, having more people help out with that is really important. And I think among other priorities over the midterm, trying to figure out ways to even just find ways to stipend and pay some of the staff that are working part-time is really important. So trying to do more and more of that. And speaking of that, actually, staff that we're trying to find more ways to support. This is perfect timing, really. Going to welcome Matt in to chat. Now we had some questions come from the community about rankings, and I know you've been at the helm of the USAR data and rankings team for a couple of years. So I just have one question for you. Why am I not ranked higher? What's going on here?
I was gonna say, the first question that comes to mind is like, why is my rank so low?
No, jokes aside, I know there's a couple of like broad questions I'd love to speak to. So maybe just to set the scene, like, can you help me frame what is like the background on building out this model? You can keep it pretty like high level, and then obviously I'll try to pester you with some smaller questions, and Rohil can definitely jump into and try to nag you.
Sure.
But what is this rankings process and team that we have?
Yeah, I mean, when we first started a few years ago, I think it was like still fully subjective. That was when Kevin was on the team and stuff, and we just literally kind of had a panel of people and just said this is the top 20 kind of a thing, and then others were pushing for it to be more objective and not as much of a, I mean, for lack of better words, people were saying like more of a popularity contest compared to just like objectively looking at data and saying, yes, this person is better. So that's kind of where this need came from, is just wanting to have a more objective way of saying, yeah, I want this person is better than this person, but then it kind of begs the question of, do we want this to be accurate versus do we want,
right.
Do I care how we came up with this number?
And like I guess one like intermediary thing is there are lots of tournament series. I think a lot of people listening to this, everyone should know about the Spike Ball Tour series. There's other tournament series that are, locally within regions and states. There's some in like Asia and Europe that have point series where you get points associated with each tournament, and that tracks your rank. Versus what USAR Roundnet and some other groups are trying to build is something a little bit different than just like a points accumulate over time, but really more dependent on who you play, the order you play them, maybe. So I'd love to hear kind of how that's progressed, and you can skip maybe the all the trials and tribulations, but if you want to share any shortcomings or challenges that are faced, that could probably dovetail into how we can continue improving in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's super hard, especially because of how like we have a lot of pockets of communities, especially across the US. And how do we rank? First of all, you should, if you're a good player in your local community, you should probably be ranked higher than the people in your local community. But how does that community compare to this other one? And also, like, I definitely know people who got better just over the winter and are now very good. And how do we account for that as well? But also people who got injured and are now very bad. So they should drop quickly, but these other people should drop not quickly. And so there's a lot of like give and take in both directions of, how do we compare people and what is a fair way to do this?
Yeah. I guess like some of the bigger questions around, obviously there's all these challenges. What are maybe some of the goals as you see them? I know like I've tried to share some of the ways that rankings could be used to support other fun things or even just like seeding tournaments. But what are some of the different goals you have in mind and that like the team has had in mind for what the rankings can do, and then also like how they maybe clash a bit, because ultimately you have to make a subjective call even though you're trying to do it in a data-driven way.
Yeah, I kind of see it as two main goals. The first of which being just how can we have a solid list in terms of like I think it's very dangerous to have like just the one elite premier status tied to just that one spike ball tour series. I really like what we're doing with the player statuses. And so I think that's one big goal of how do we come up with something that passes the smell test and that people are comfortable and confident using, that like, yes, I won this game. It got me 10 points. I know how my ranking was affected by this tournament. So that would be one goal. And then the other one would be like using it to come up with really fun, cool content, like the simulations, for example, of, oh, we think this person is like 70% likely to win. And when we say 70%, we would like that to be close to the truth. So this should be accurate. But at the same time, we want to make sure that people actually understand how we're doing it as well. So I'd say that's kind of the two big goals. Do fun content with it, but also make sure that we can have statuses that make sense to everyone involved.
Yeah, I know right now, like we're in this new era of trying to give people status based on these ELO ratings. And one really big challenge is trying to figure out what do you do with players who play different amounts. You mentioned some people show up after the off season, the winter, they grinded, they're insane now, and the rank should be like hundreds of spots higher. And then on the flip side, I'll call myself out. I'm somehow rated as a bronze player, and that's because I was like okay a couple of years ago, but then I haven't played in a sanctioned event in the US for 2 years. So in my opinion, I think my ELO should be deprecated further. So talk me through the challenges of like you said, if you win a game, your rating goes up 10 points or 15 points, depending on, the matchup. How do you balance that mobility with like things being maybe too volatile where whoever wins the most recent tournament would be just automatically the first, top player?
Yeah, I mean, historically, what we've always done is just kind of the benchmark is just accuracy. How accurate is this model historically compared with like the actual outcomes that we've seen in games? So that's kind of been the Rosetta Stone we've always gone after, because if you could name me any example right now, and I could give you a counter example of how that would harm somebody else, like this person, their ranking should go up very quickly because they grinded over the winter. But guess what? This person got injured 2 years ago and they're back, but actually they're still good, so they shouldn't go down at all. There's always that constant give and take. So it's more so like trying to, what's that phrase? It's like look through the trees and see the forest.
Missing the forest for the trees.
Yeah, that's what it
Absolutely.
is. That's what it is. Like I'm sure you could name me a single example of somebody that their ranking is messed up, but the point is that this, as a whole, it looks good. Sure, there's going to be some people that it gets messed up for, but as a whole, it should look good.
Yeah, I think. Go ahead, Rohel.
Yeah. What sort of information would the rankings committee or resources would the committee need to play with in the future to try to get this more accurate or more timely? Maybe update it after every game, but obviously that's not possible.
Yeah, I mean, some of those are honestly fwango limitations. It's not like the easiest tournament software just to like get data in a very automated approach. Like currently, it's still relatively manual. But honestly, like the more the better. I could even see a world where like, I mean, we don't even have score data for everything. So first of all, let's get scores. And then second of all, like what if there was a world where, I don't know, all of the upper bracket in Premier has stats? Okay, cool. Or not even stats. Maybe we just have like serve percentages, just something extra. And then for the semis and finals, we have all of the stats. So then we can actually like maybe say, okay, for top 10, we have this model. It accounts for all of these stats that we've seen in the finals. And then we can actually differentiate between, spots 2 and 5. And then, from spots 50 to 100, we have a little bit less information, but we still have more information than we have for people who are in the bronze bracket 300 plus, so that way, just the more the better, honestly. Like right now, I don't know, there's even people, I think, debating like whether or not they should report their injury forfeits. Please just tell us so we don't count it, just, yeah, we're kind of working with bare bones here.
Yeah, I'm curious if you've like strong feelings one way or another on playing out for place. I think like one challenge I see as a TD is like you get a lot of these players that are in like this midsection and they like only want to play the players better than them. And then if they lose, they don't have any interest in like sizing up against the people that are maybe their peers, because they're like gassed or whatever it may be. You can give me your read as a data person and also as just like someone who also does a lot of work in the Boston Roundnet community. Like, what would it mean if everyone played out for place? And maybe it's not always best of 3, but how would that be helpful from a data perspective?
Yeah, I mean, fully conflicted views here. As like, I do a lot of. We have like a whole tournament series, so I help as a TD in Boston. Gonna help with the Boston Challenger this year. So from that perspective, it's like, what's the most fun day we can have? But as a like person working with data here, it's like, yes, give me more data. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, even if you just played one game to 21 and like even if both teams medium tried and that was relatively representative of what would happen, that would be so helpful just to know that like, yes, you can blow this team out of the water even when you're not trying and you're gassed. That way we can at least have something to work with here. Of course, ideally everyone is always playing forever. Don't know if that's realistically going to happen with with like the sentiment in the community, but even if you just give us one game 21, you won, and then you're done, and you can go watch your buddies that are playing in the finals. That's great.
Give me one more game.
Just give me anything.
Give me one more game. I might ask you for one more game after that, though. When I'm a TD.
Yeah, that's okay. That's fair enough. I will also ask you for one more. But yeah, what we like to do is loser decides if it's best of 3 series. So then if the loser is like, I'm done, then you just move on.
That's definitely a good vibe for I guess like an unsanctioned tournament versus like for more sanctioned play.
Yeah.
It's hard to play like loose with the rules of actually we're gonna play 15 for this one, which is always a challenge. Something that you can't know everything going into the day. There's a lot of unknowns that happen where if you had a multiple 3-game series and all of a sudden you're toast or you tweaked an ankle, expectations might be different.
And then you put it in as a forfeit, so like 0 to -1 or whatever Matt says, so that we have good data. We want clean data.
Matt, as far as like other things that you maybe would want out of improving the rankings, like talk about people putting things in. I know Rojo and I talked a little bit about anybody can run a sanctioned tournament. There's a pretty clear like process to go through of getting it sanctioned. What else can players or like clubs and communities do to help make the rankings better?
Okay. I'm trying to think. There's a bunch of things just off the top of my head. Please stop making multiple fwango accounts. That'd be awesome. So there's a ton of things that are just like data quality wise you could do. If you're a TD, if you could just name your contender division in a consistent manner, that'd be great. So there's like a lot of things. Honestly, we could even come up with like a sheet, just like, yes, you can put your tournament name here, but after a dash, please just put contender. So we know all of these are the contender divisions or whatever it is, so that we know with relative, because that definitely can slip through the crack. If I see Gabe Finaki and Gabriel Finaki, okay, sure, I fixed that one. But sometimes I don't know everyone's names. So like if it's misspelled or if it's an abbreviation, this could be a different person. I genuinely don't know. So that would be super helpful. Just also, we have that player profile page. Just look at it. If it's missing one of your tournaments, just let us know and we can figure out, like, is this a naming issue? Are we missing a tournament? Like, what kind of issue is going on here? So we can fix those types of events.
I know a big thing there was a lot of contender division tournaments have yet to be maybe like folded back in. And so that's been a exciting part of like the way the transition to this ELO status has worked, is people can play in different divisions and start at different ratings. Long story short, more people can be part of the same ecosystem in the same way we want to compare one community to another. It's also cool to be able to track how is this player in this division at rising through the ranks, and then ultimately we have just more people showing on the site, and then more people can go do the research on who's this Matt Garbecki fellow.
For sure. Honestly, it's super fun. Like, I played in LA a couple weeks ago, looked up everyone in my pool. I was like, oh, which ones are going to be the tough games? And I don't know, I was talking to somebody else and they were like looking for a partner, and they had a potential partner, but they didn't know them. So they looked up their ranking and they're like, oh, are they like close to me, or are they way better? Are they way worse?
Sure. And having more and more confidence in that over time will be a good thing as the ranks get hopefully cleaner. That's sweet. Is there anything else that you want to share to whether it's rankings or maybe general sports stuff. I know Rohil and I have vamped a bit about just growing the sport with USAR Roundnet as one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Honestly, this one is just like a super fun way for, I feel like, everyone to be connected throughout the US, but also to drive a lot of these initiatives, because I feel like everyone's always chasing like different statuses, pro, premier, whatever it is. And it's just a fun way to like compare yourself against everyone. So I don't know, help us out. We're trying to help you, help us help you.
Yeah, I think like you mentioned, like comparing and growing. I know we know loosely where people are from statewide, so we might be able to look at like who's got the most gold players, the most silver players, and kind of look at how some communities stack up. So that could be fun too.
Side project coming up.
Yeah, side project for someone. I know the data team has a bunch of folks looking to get something done. So
yeah, we kind of
shortage of ideas.
We're growing.
Sweet. All right. Well, I think this is a pretty good start to Ask USA Roundnet, or Ask Us Anything Roundnet, Ask USAR. So thanks, Matt, for joining, and Rohil. Hopefully next month we'll get some more questions to dive into, and just keep getting info out to people.
I'd love to talk specific, so ask specific questions.